You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth, the show that detects, exposes, and reveals actual and hidden facts, truth, research, and statistics about all the Detroit and Michigan sports teams that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know, whether fans like it or not. No junk, no entertainment, no homerism, no coddling, no pop culture, no opinions, no shilling, and no fluff. Head over to our website at michigansportstruth.weebly.com, follow us on Twitter at Michigan_truth, and like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth. Also listen to us on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts via iTunes. The Michigan Sports Truth podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them.
And welcome to episode 321 of the Week in Review edition. I'm Taylor Phillips, the week of June 24th, 2018. I'm Taylor Phillips, along with Buck Geno. Follow me on Twitter at DT2Phillips. Follow Buck Geno on Twitter at BuckGeno3, triple I for Roman numerals. Got a lot to talk about. Lots of Red Wings, lots of Pistons, and of course the Tigers. How everybody projected them to get over 500, and was proven wrong. And we're going to carry the What's Your Grade segment throughout the entire episode, just like we've done 5 questions as of late. So let's get to it. First off, the Red Wings declining right winger Martin Frk's qualifying offer, making him a free agent. Now, we thought that Ken Holland was proving again and again that he's not a rebuilding guy, and then they go to Dan Bylsma and hire him as an assistant coach, which means their power play can improve because Bylsma wants the power play to quote unquote attack and converge, and according to Frank Vajner, our news contributor, our public and private news contributor to our podcast, it could be the end of Jeff Blashill's head coaching tenure because Jeff Blashill is in the final year of his contract and he hasn't done jack squat, and Dan Bylsma has done a lot more. He's developed the power play. And then the draft, and then Xavier Ouellet being put on waivers for the purpose of a buyout.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on. We haven't even gotten to the draft yet. We'll hit the Bylsma hiring first. Obviously, Dan Bylsma, a Stanley Cup winner with Pittsburgh, and a guy who has coached around the league. Most recent stop was at Buffalo, and then he was let go from there. And some people thought that might have been the wrong move because Buffalo, who had struggled for a while, they are kind of in the same boat as the Red Wings as far as a rebuild. They had started theirs a couple of years earlier with the draft of Jack Eichel. They didn't really improve this past season. Bylsma was given a 3-year contract, and the first 2 years they didn't really improve from year 1 to year 2. And Terry Pegula, the owner of the Sabres, really wanted to see a lot of progress. And injuries and some other contributing factors led to the Sabres being bad again. And Dan Bylsma was the guy who felt the axe and then looking for a job. So he ended up landing with the Detroit Red Wings. And the writing is on the wall for Jeff Blashill in a couple of different ways. Number one, this will be another set of assistant coaches for him. And John Torchetti was not retained. And he was in charge of the power play last year. And they're bringing in Bylsma to help improve the power play. And if you keep bringing in guys to improve the power play and it keeps stinking, sometimes it might not be the guy that's telling you how to run the power play. It might be the guys that you have on the ice that are trying to execute the power play. So that said, they're going to bring in Dan Bylsma as assistant coach. And the writing is on the wall, like I said, in a couple different ways. Number one, the power play, they need to get it fixed. They need to make it run at least halfway decent with the people that they have on the roster. And neither of the two coaches that Jeff Blashill has brought in to do that have been able to do so with any success. And so they're basically telling Jeff Blashill, hey, we're not really Illich type of move rather than a Jeff Blashill. So, for what it's worth. The second thing is the writing is on the wall for Jeff Blashill himself, simply because Dan Bylsma is a guy with head coaching experience in the NHL. He's got a Stanley Cup ring, and he has had varied amounts of success with different teams. Now, again, Buffalo, his last stop, didn't have the success that he did like he did in Pittsburgh. And not the same type of success that he had when he was in Anaheim. You look at what Dan Bylsma was able to do, and he took a Pittsburgh Penguins team in midseason when they fired Michel Therrien, and he's a guy that, as a player in Anaheim, had success. When he was a coach in Pittsburgh, he had success, and when he was a coach at Buffalo, he didn't have as much success, but of course, you look at the roster he had, and it wasn't really that great. So, obviously, Dan Bylsma has seen both ends, and I think for Jeff Blashill, he should be taking notice, because if they stumble out of the gate, which could very well happen, especially with the thought that they're going to be rebuilding and putting a very young roster on the ice, and Jeff Blashill can't get them to produce at least at a reasonable level, then he could get the gate and Dan Bylsma could take over for the rest of the season. And there shouldn't be any real hiccup as far as a coaching ability curve, because Dan Bylsma, even though his last stop in Buffalo was not very good, still has a Stanley Cup ring. He still coached the Pittsburgh Penguins to victory over the Red Wings in 2009. And Dan Bylsma has had success in the NHL, and Jeff Blashill has not. Jeff Blashill was a winner at every level he's been at, except for the NHL. So the writing's on the wall for Jeff Blashill that, number one, he's not going to be picking the coaches, hand-picking the coaches anymore. And number two, if he falters or the team falters, he could very well be out of a job, and Dan Bylsma could step in as the interim head coach. And if they perform well enough, maybe he could get himself a new contract and a new gig as the permanent Red Wings head coach for the time being. So I think this is all positive for them. We'll talk about the draft here in a little bit, how they did a very good job, in my opinion. But the biggest thing was hiring Dan Bylsma as an assistant coach, because as a guy coming into that room, they've had some nice guys as assistant coaches in the past as far as resumes, but nothing like Dan Bylsma. You've got a Stanley Cup winning coach coming on the bench, and I think that the message is clear from both ownership and Ken Holland, is that we're not asking you to win right now, but we're asking you to at least execute the plan. And if they don't execute the plan, we'll find somebody else that does. So I think this is a positive, and I think that for the Red Wings, especially with the draft they had, it'll be interesting to see as the season progresses what Jeff Blashill's job status looks like, because I think that they're going to go in there, and if they're really I guess the best word to say would be behind this rebuild. If they're really invested in it, and Jeff Blashill isn't getting it done, then they have somebody on the bench that would be a pretty seamless transition. And if Jeff Blashill is going to continue to put the line combos out there that he has for the past 2 years, which are pretty terrible, playing guys like Luke Glendening on the power play, Darren Hill, there's all sorts of personnel things that he's done that just make no sense when you're talking about. I know that he has a limited roster as far as talent, but you don't put third, fourth line guys on the power play if they don't have a specific job. And win the face-off, okay, that's fine, but they can't win the face-off and then skate off the ice and wait for some other guy to come on. It was just really, for Jeff Blashill, he's had a really tough time in Detroit. I would say his biggest shortfall on his coaching tenure with Detroit has been the personnel usage. And I think that this year, if you're presenting him with younger players, they want those guys to play. It's very possible that Philip Zadina, who was drafted first round by the Red Wings, and Michael Rasmussen, last year's first round NHL time this year. It's not out of the realm of possibility that guys like Evgeny Svechnikov, Philip Hronek, and Joe Hicketts could see major NHL time as well. So I think that the message is clear from ownership and from Ken Holland is that if we're going to do this rebuild, we're going to do it with young players. I know that they offered a contract to Mike Green, and he's still mulling it over. I don't think he makes a decision until July 1st when he can talk to everybody else and find out what's out there. John Carlson set the bar real high today in a related note. He signed an 8-year deal for $8 million per. That's $64 million for you math wizards at home, which means that the market for right-handed shooting defensemen isn't going to be cheap. And I think that the offer that Detroit would offer to give to Mike Green would be substantially below what he might be able to get on the open market. And I don't think that Detroit is interested in bringing him back at a significantly higher price than he was earning before, which means that he could hit the open market, go to a different team, get paid, and then they can bring up the younger guys to fill that role. They don't need to go dipping in the free agent pool for a defenseman when they already have a lot of bad contracts back there. They don't need to add another one. So my thought would be that they would add those younger players from Grand Rapids and make a go of it that way. This team is still probably 2 years away from at least contending for some sort of wild card or division placement in the playoffs. So to play all these young guys next season isn't going to be a bad thing. You get another high pick, maybe because they didn't get Quinn Hughes this year, maybe they get Jack Hughes next year. The younger brother is going to be going to Michigan. So there's a lot of things that can happen, but I think that overall, so far, some of the right steps have been taken, and despite themselves, Detroit has followed its rebuild plan almost to a T so far.
Yeah, and we're going to get to the What's Your Grade segment right about now with Dan Bylsma. Just a second.
Pencils down, everyone. It's time to find out what's your grade.
All right, Buck. Survey says...
My grade for Dan Bylsma, I'm going to give this one a solid A-. The reason I'm doing that is because it basically puts Jeff Blashill's butt on the grill as far as producing, or at least showing some sort of signs of progress this season. And also, it gives them somebody that has experience, championship experience. And even though he took Pittsburgh to the finals, which is significantly more talented roster than he had in Buffalo, he knows how to get it done on the ice, too. He was a member of that 2003 Stanley Cup final team with Mike Babcock that ended up losing to the New Jersey Devils in 7 games. So he's been there as a player. He's been there as a coach. He knows how to get there. He knows what to expect and how that equation should go. So I think that it's a plus all the way around. The only reason I don't give it an A or an A+ is simply because, his tenure in Buffalo was uneven. There were some rumors out there that he had alienated some big names, including Jack Eichel in the locker room, for whatever reason. I'm not here to judge that because those are rumors and you're not in that room, so you don't know who's right and who's wrong. But what I can say for him is that he's had success as a player and a coach, and that is definitely something that can resonate in a locker room that for the last 6 or 7 years has not been a success.
Yeah, not to mention the power play that Bylsma wants to improve. And he's got a plan for it, too.
Well, everybody wants to improve it because it's terrible. But like I said, sometimes it's not the arrows, it's the Indian. And I think for the Red Wings, it's been a combination of both. But when you're running out some of those power play lines like they've got now, it's hard to have success because you're not putting guys out there that can finish. And you have to have almost perfect execution to score when you're using guys that don't have a lot of creativity or don't have a lot of higher level skills that some of the other teams are able to use.
Right. So let's get to that second big thing, which is the draft. The Ken Holland meant business with the first 2 draft picks, right winger Philip Sedina at number 6 overall, and then center Joe Veleno at number 30. Joe Veleno especially was the 14th best available player going into pick number 30 overall, and everybody left it all on the table for the Detroit Red Wings to pick up, which they did. And then rounds 2 through 7, Jonathan Bergeron, Jared McIsaac, Alec Regula, Seth Barton, Jesper Eliasson in goal, Ryan O'Reilly, Victor Brattstrom in goal, and Otto Kivenmaki at 191. But those first 2 picks were solid, period.
Yeah, and they even made a couple moves inside the draft to be able to pick guys that they were wanting. And, when we got into this draft, everybody thought, and you can listen to our archives web podcasts, and you can go back. I talked about Quinn Hughes. I was all over Quinn Hughes or maybe Joel Bouchard because I thought they were going to go defense. Never in my mind did I ever think that Filip Zadina was going to fall all the way to 6. I just didn't envision that. I don't think anybody that was pontificating about the draft thought that Filip Zadina, who was basically rated the second best player in the draft by many of the draft boards, fell all the way to 6. And the teams that passed on him, you're talking about teams that sorely lack forward scoring punch. And it was just surprising to see teams like Montreal and Ottawa pass on Filip Zadina, and the Red Wings have him fall right into their lap. The only credit I give to Ken Holland is that he actually took this time instead of doing what he did last time, which was trade to get out of that pick instead of taking Jacob Chikrin a couple of years ago. But instead opted to trade Pavel Datsyuk's dead contract and his pick in order to move back 4 spots and end up taking Dennis Cholowski instead. But we won't rehash old bad things. We'll talk about the new things that are happening. So Filip Zadina, as you mentioned, the number 6 pick, and then Joe Veleno, another guy who just fell right down the draft board. I felt like when I was looking at the draft order, teams had some specific plans with what they wanted in regards to a player. So a lot of teams, unlike the Red Wings, were going with specific guys that they were looking for. They were looking to fill roles on their team or to fill roles that could be vacated at some point on their team. They weren't taking best available. Because if you were going to go right down best available, neither Zadina nor Veleno should have been around when they were picked by Detroit. So 2 quality pickups for Detroit. They didn't have to do a lot of wiggle room. Didn't have to use a lot of wiggle room as far as trades to get there.
They did what they needed to do.
Yeah, and the number 30 pick was from Las Vegas as a product of the Tomas Tatar trade. So they snapped that up. So and that was a bonus, having 2 picks in the first round. And then people were saying, why didn't they pick a defenseman? Okay, well, when you have a guy like Filip Zadina who falls into your lap, you got to take him. You can't wait and say, well, we'll pass on him because we'll get a defenseman because that's what we really need. There's not a defenseman that they're going to draft this year that I think would have immediately started for them. That wouldn't have been right in the NHL lineup. And chances are they would have had to wait for 3 years. With Filip Zadina, I don't think they have to wait that long. They could plug him into the opening day roster right now. Now, I'm not saying you got to play him 20 minutes a game because he's still very young, hasn't developed fully as far as size and strength, but he's 6 foot, 200 pounds. He's a left-handed shooter, and he can score. I mean, I think the reason that a lot of people marked him down on their draft board is because he's coming from the Q, which is typically rated the worst of the 3 major junior leagues. And a lot of people don't take for granted what the stats are in that league as compared to the OHL or the Western Hockey League. I'm surprised that Ken Holland didn't take a Western Hockey League kid because, well, that's what he does. But instead, in the first round, he takes 2 kids from the Q that have high offensive upside. Joe Veleno looks to be projecting out as a 3rd center, which if Rasmussen and Larkin pan out as their 1st and 2nd centers for the future, Veleno can fit right in there at 3. So, very good picks there. Like I said, it was something that kind of fell into Holland's lap, but that first round was very good.
Yeah. So, another grade to do.
Pencils down, everyone. It's time to find out what's your grade.
So grade that draft in general by the Wings, huh?
Well, I'm going to give the draft as a whole an A minus. I think that they really were. They stayed on track. They really concentrated on the best available guy. They didn't go with defense first, even though everybody wanted them to, because they stink at defense. Their organizational depth at defense is very shallow. They don't develop them very well, so people thought, well, I have to draft an NHL or close to NHL-ready defenseman. And, yeah, that would have been great if Philip Zenian wasn't sitting there at 6. But when you have a guy that could be a future 40-goal scorer in the league from the wing, I mean, that's a guy you just have to be able to pick up. The Detroit Red Wings have not had a 30-goal scorer since Marian Hossa. I mean, it boggles the mind, but they haven't had a guy that can get that many goals. And in today's NHL, goal scoring obviously is a premium, but you look at the top teams, they have guys that are in the 30s and the 40s, and you don't get that by drafting guys who stand in front of the net anymore. So, I think that they really went all in with the strategy of best player available. They went finally from defense after they drafted Jonathan Berggren, a right wing from Sweden, in the second round. They were able to get another pick almost immediately after that. They finally went defense. Another kid from the Q, Jared McIsaac, and he plays for Halifax. Actually, he was a teammate of Philip Zenian's, and they were able to get him in the second round, their fourth pick in the first 36. So if you're picking 4 guys out of the top 36, one of those guys has got to turn out. I mean, it's the law of averages. So they really invested in move some pieces around to get those first 4 picks, and that 36th pick for Jared McIsaac was great. He's a kid that is more of a stay-at-home-ish defenseman. He's not an offensive juggernaut necessarily, but he's got some good skills with him as far as defense. So they're hoping he can develop and become kind of a shutdown defensive defenseman. You really go through the whole draft. I think the only reach really was Alec Regula out of London. He's a 6'3", 203-pounder. He's a right-handed shot, so they wanted to keep one of those handy in the system, because right-handed defensemen that can shoot well are always something that you want. But again, he's more of a stay-at-home guy, but he's a right-handed shot, and you always want to have a couple of those on your back line. Like I said, when they finally started picking guys in the 3rd and 4th round that are traditionally, your project or your long-term guys. I mean, they were getting guys that are still, even though they're not going to be in the system as far as Toledo or Grand Rapids perhaps next year, they're guys that can develop and still be able to make an impact sooner rather than later. So you hear a lot of the things as far as the projections for the later round picks. The word late bloomer gets thrown around a lot with those guys, which means that they are really hoping that one of them takes off. But when you're drafting that far down, you're not picking up guys that are projected to be in your lineup in that year. So I'm not displeased with that. And as I mentioned, they made some moves, transferred some of their draft capital that they had built up, and were able to make their first 4 picks within the first 36 picks of the draft, which is huge. It's really advantageous if you can make that many picks in the first 36. You're going to get quality players. So I'm going to give it an A minus. Like I said, the only reason I'm not giving it an A is because they did reach a little bit with Regula, who was the first pick outside of the first 36, and some of the other guys that they take. When you hear a late bloomer, you also start to think, well, maybe they're just not very good. And people think that they're going to be good, but they actually aren't. So that said, that's kind of buoyed by the fact that they took 4 players that should be able to make an impact sooner rather than later. their first four. So A- on that.
Yep. All right, now to Marty Frk being declined his qualifying offer, making him a free agent. We're going to grade that right about now.
Everyone, it's time to find out what's
Martin
your
Frk,
grade.
he's been banged around as far as the AHL. He got waived. He went to Carolina. They waived him. They brought him back to Grand Rapids, and then they brought him up to Detroit last season. He wasn't particularly impressive, but when you're talking about a team that finished 6th worst in the league, there's probably not a lot of impressive guys. So I agree with the decision. I mean, you got a guy he's going to be 24. He's going into his 5th professional year. He holds arbitration rights, which means that if they go to a qualifying offer and he rejects it, then they have to go to arbitration by rule. So he might have been able to get more than what he was already scheduled to make with this qualifying offer. Now he can turn that down and select arbitration instead. And with the Red Wings cap situation, because they have a lot of guys with bad contracts, they weren't really willing to make that gamble. Now, does that mean that he's not going to be a Detroit Red Wing or a Grand Rapids Griffin next year? Maybe or maybe not. But if he hits the open market and somebody takes him, that's different than if they try to go to arbitration with him. So I agree with the move. I mean, he wasn't particularly impressive with the Red Wings. He's a right-handed shooter. He's got a good shot, but the problem was that he was not consistent. And, he didn't get a ton of time 5-on-5 because he was viewed as a poor defensive player in his time here in Grand Rapids. He was kind of a one-trick pony when it came to his game, which was his shot. And in the NHL, you got to have more than one thing going for you. So I think he's probably going to be a terrific AHL player because you can get away with that more in that league. But in the NHL, it's just going to be very hard for him to find a spot and get consistent minutes. So my grade on that is another A-. Even though Marty Frk is a fan favorite in Grand Rapids, his game does not translate to the NHL very well. And even though he was productive early in the season, he kind of fell off after the halfway point and really struggled offensively. And I know that the Red Wings weren't good, and some of that is part of it, but he just was not able to create his own chances very much. And when you can't do that in today's NHL, there's not going to be a lot of room for you.
Right. Now there's one more event to grade before we move on to the next team.
Pencils down, everyone. It's time to find out what's your grade.
And that is the Wings placing defenseman Xavier Ouellet on waivers for the purpose of a buyout. Now, keep in mind, they're going to be on the hook for roughly $216,667 total over the next 2 years of his remaining salary once they cut ties with him.
So the rules, salary cap rules are pretty involved. So to put this in lay terms, basically what happens is there's a percentage of his salary that they're going to be responsible for on their cap, and they're going to be able to take it over the next 2 years. So they're going to take a $216,000 and change cap hit for the next 2 years, which is going to get them out to $433,000 and change, which means that it's a very small cap hit because he has a small salary, and because of his age and how big his contract was, all those things basically mean that they're able to get rid of him for a fraction of what they owed him as far as the cap is concerned. And they will have that money on there for the next couple of years. Not a big deal. They weren't going to play him. They couldn't trade him, so they're going to buy him out. And I think Xavier Ouellet is probably happy that he's going to go and have a chance to go somewhere else and see if he can hook on with another team. And Detroit will be happy to have him off the roster because that'll open up a spot for what should be somebody like Philip Perot or Joe Higgins instead of finding another broken down old defenseman. So I'm going to give that one an A- again. And the reason I'm giving an A- and not an A is because it costs them money, even though that was the only way they could get rid of him. If they could get rid of him for free and they got a bag of hammers for him on the trade market, that would have been great, but it wasn't to be, so they're so they'll have to shoulder that. But the cap is moving up, and some of the bad contracts that Detroit has on the books are coming up in the next couple of years, which means that they finally might be able to sign some more people. And Ken Howell's got 2 years on his latest contract, so we'll see what happens after those 2 years.
All right, and we're going to have even more to grade as we move on and transition to this team.
Left sideline, three, and he answers.
The Pistons. Now, according to Rod Beard, before we get to the draft, on Twitter at Det News Rod Beard, the Pistons beat writer for the Detroit News, we got a tweet from Rod Beard saying that Ed Stefanski is assuming the position of the Pistons general manager. I believe, there we go. Oh, no, I didn't get it, but anyway. He said that Ed Stefanski is going to be the new GM for the next few years, and I believe that's a good move for Ed Stefanski to assume the general manager role by himself.
Well, it was apparent that they were actually going to hire one. On Tom Gore's strategy or propensity for not telling anybody anything that's going on, that trend continues because Ed Stefanski was brought on, first of all, as a senior advisor, I believe, or some sort of...
Yep, it was a senior advisor, yep.
And now he's going to be the general manager. So they didn't have one. The draft was coming. Ed Stefanski has done it before. He has had kind of a rocky resume when it came to be the GM for other clubs, but he does have the experience. He's got Dwayne Casey, who is his new head coach. Probably hard to bring a GM into a situation that is flying blind as far as getting a coach. I mean, you got a 5-year contract for the coach. The GM's going to be like, well, I don't want him, or maybe he's not my guy. Well, it's too bad. This is going to be your coach. So it was going to be difficult for them to find somebody to fill that spot. Stefanski's already there. They're already cutting him paychecks. They're like, hey, why don't you just do this? And that's kind of how it felt. Mixed emotions on that because, like I said, his previous GM record is spotty at best. The guy that took Evan Turner second overall when he was with the 76ers. The kind of Stefanski is he really falls in love with certain players. And case in point would be Evan Turner, who that year when he was drafted was far from the second best player available. And so that said, I think that what they did in the draft that we'll talk about later was fine. You're not drafting from a position of power. They didn't have a first-round pick. And they were able to take 1 second-round pick that they had and turn it into 2 players with the trades that they made. So they were able to use some draft collateral from future years and go ahead and grab another second-round pick. Second-round picks, history as far as making opening day rosters are pretty slim, but at least they got 2 players when they might have had 1 or maybe even none. So they did some work and were able to get a couple guys that, again, may or may not pan out, but you get 2 kicks in the can instead of 1. And so I thought that was a good move by them. Like I said, Ed Stefanski being the GM, it doesn't surprise me. But like I said, mixed emotions on it just because of the previous record. But with Dwayne Casey at the helm, you would think that at least they could make something out of nothing with the roster that he's given.
All right, yep. So let's get to that draft. And the Pistons trade up with the Philadelphia Sixers at 38 overall for shooting guard Kyrie Thomas from Creighton. And then they draft shooting guard Bruce Brown Jr. from Miami, Florida at number 42. We're going to get back to the What's Your Grade segment on this. Hold on.
Pencils down, everyone. It's time to find out what's your grade.
Survey says...
Well, folks that know a lot more about basketball than I do. They're pretty high. Some graded the picks individually, some graded the draft as a whole. The consensus was that they did better than what was projected. So at this point, this draft looks better than what they took in the draft lottery the last 2 years. And so I think that I'm going to give this grade a B+. Kyrie Thomas from Creighton, who is a big, long player. He's got a big wingspan. He's not tall, but got big wingspan and can help them defensively, which is something that they do need. They need somebody that can defend passing lanes, and Kyrie Thomas could be that guy. Kind of what they call a 3-and-D guy. He can shoot from deep, and he can play some D. And that's kind of what you need out of a backup two guard, is a guy that can shoot and a guy that can handle his business on the defensive end. When you're talking about their other draft pick, Bruce Brown from Miami, he was selected 4 picks later after Detroit made some trades and moved around. So they got the 38 pick and the 42 pick, which they were originally scheduled to have. Another guy who can play defensively and also contribute on the offensive end. I think if there's going to be a guy that sticks on this roster, it's probably going to be Kyrie Thomas more than Bruce Brown. I think Bruce Brown will probably be a D-League guy or a G-League guy. I don't know what the hell it is now. But anyway, he'll be in Grand Rapids probably next season and see if he can develop there. And I think that Kyrie Thomas, if he doesn't make the opening day roster, which would be mildly shocking, but not really that surprising, he'll probably be in Grand Rapids. But a lot of people project him, especially with his defensive ability and the fact that the Pistons suck on defense. They feel that they can find a spot for him sooner rather than later. The difficulty is going to be with all the already crowded backcourt when it comes to contracts, getting him into the rotation and having more dead money for guys like Lance and Galloway that also fit that 3-and-D player role, and seeing what they can do with that mess. So, great for the draft to B+, and we'll see what they do with him in Summer League.
All right. 2 more events to grade here.
Pencils down, everyone. It's time to find out what's your grade.
Pistons then hire Sean Sweeney as an assistant coach. What's your grade on that one?
I'm going to give that one a B+ as well. The only reason is because as an assistant, I think that assistants, even though they are important, they tend to have a little bit less impact unless they're going to be a viable head coaching candidate. And I think Dwayne Casey, obviously, with a 5-year contract, isn't going anywhere soon. And so he's hiring guys that can be more of developmental guys. He's hiring Sean Sweeney because Sean Sweeney has a good reputation for being able to help out with specific things. So you look at the Red Wings, they get guys like Dan Bylsma to help on the power play. Sean Sweeney's going to be brought in to be kind of like a defensive coordinator. And he previously worked with the Milwaukee Bucks, and he implemented some changes on their defensive end that helped them improve. Having the Greek Freak also probably helped improve their defense a little bit and having better rosters. But that said, Sean Sweeney is regarded as a pretty decent assistant coach and going to fix that defensive problem where a lot of people are looking at the Detroit Pistons as they were last year and looking at how they perform defensively. That's the thing they got to fix, so it looks like they're going to concentrate on that. Offensively, I think they could still use some work, but I think Dwayne Casey is going to have that kind of be a work in progress. So it seems to me that Dwayne Casey is going to really concentrate on the defensive end first and let the offense kind of slowly come along. And as he brings in a new system, takes Dan Van Gundy's old system, junks it, and brings in his system, typically that's a little bit longer turnaround than stop the other guy from scoring. And so they're going to do the defense first, which at least should help them contend in a lot more games, or at least make them tougher to play against. So I'm going to give it a B+. and we'll see where it goes.
All right. Last one here for the podcast.
Pencils
for the episode.
down, everyone. It's time to find out what's your grade.
Lastly, today they hired DJ Bakker as a player development coach, someone that Dwayne Casey picked up from the Toronto Raptors. He's taken some of the Toronto Raptors staff with him to the Pistons in downtown Detroit at Little Caesars Arena to try to improve the team.
Well, when you're a new head coach in a different place and you had success with different guys at your previous stop, you tend to bring them along with you. And that's one of those things that happened. DJ Bakker is going to be his player development coach. Basically what that means is he's going to be the guy that is helping out during practice and making sure guys are doing what they're supposed to be doing and progressing how they're supposed to be. So it's going to be his kind of gopher as far as information to what guys are doing in practice, how they're looking, and are they making progress from where they started. So as a head coach, you got to know those things. You want to know who's doing well in your system, who's not, who's getting better, what you want them to get better, who's not, so on and so forth. So the grade I'm going to give this one is another B+. The only reason I'm not giving it anything towards the A range is because it is a guy that he's bringing over from Toronto. Dwayne Casey was fired from Toronto because he couldn't beat LeBron James or the Cleveland Cavaliers. But when you get fired and you bring your guys with you, even though you trust them and you want them as part of your staff, then you got fired for a reason. So we'll see how this pans out. But overall, it's still a pretty solid hire because it's going to give them some familiarity with the staff, and Dwayne Casey will have a sounding board with somebody that he knows.
All right. So the Red Wings' average grade is an A-. The Pistons' average grade is a B+. And that's the what's your grade segment. So for our audience, if they have a grade for each and every one of those events, for the Red Wings and the Pistons, each and every one of them, post them in the comment bank in this episode, and please don't go out of line. So, only one team left to cover, and that's the Tigers.
That one is long gone.
That should be quick.
Yeah. Everybody thought that the Tigers would go into Cincinnati and beat the hell out of the Cincinnati Reds at the Great American Ballpark. And unfortunately for them, that did not happen.
You are pathetic!
They got rocked 9-0, and for the first 8 innings, and they rallied back with 5 runs, and they still lost 9-5, and then they lost 5-3 in the opener to get swept in the 2-game series. With 2 days off Monday and Thursday before and in between, then they went into Cleveland, and they got absolutely scorched by the Indians at Progressive Field, 10-0 Friday, 12-2 Sunday. They lost 4-1 in a pretty much pitcher's duel in which Francisco Liriano didn't even make it to the 5th inning. He only went 4 innings. Matt Boyd today, 6 earned runs given up in 3 innings pitched. That is pathetic. Man.
Oh, man.
Yeah, boy, it was a rough week. Like you said, the Reds were the first step in that road trip. Ran out to a 9-0 lead before the Tigers, I don't want to say mounted a comeback, because that's not what it was. They finally got their ass in gear. Ended up losing 9-5 to make it look a little bit better than what it should have. Then they go to the next game, and Michael Fulmer was cruising along, and then he gets into the 6th inning and couldn't get out of it. Ended up leaving after he got 2 outs, but he gave up 5 hits, 3 runs, struck out 9. So he had a pretty decent start going, but just kind of ran out of gas. Couldn't get out of that 6th inning. Alex Wilson came on to relieve. He also gave up his own run, so they ended up getting out of that with they got out of the 6th inning with only giving up 3 runs, but then Alex Wilson giving up a run to start the 7th inning. He's pulled, and then the bullpen cavalcade comes through with Wayne Harvey, Lewis Coleman, Johnny Barbado. But by then, the Tigers were behind. They couldn't come back. And the over 500, which was a possibility when they were playing the Reds, because the Reds are bad. They're 28. They were 28-43 before they played that game. Before they played that series. And then they were 26-45, excuse me. And they won 2 in a row. Tigers lose 2 in a row. They go 3 under 500. So then they trump up I-70 to Cleveland and get summarily whacked by the Indians. The Indians just pound them all over the progressive field warning track and into the sleets. 10-0, as you mentioned, on Friday. Yesterday, they lose 4-1. Francisco Liriano didn't pitch poorly. The problem was the first inning took 40 pitches to get through that one and gave up 3 runs. Everything else was kind of hunky-dory for the Tigers.
Except they gave up 3. They committed 3 errors. Their defense committed 3 errors way early on in that game on Saturday night.
Yeah, it didn't help Liriano at all. So they lose that game. And then Liriano was on a pitch count. He was on a pitch count because he was coming back from injury rehab, so they couldn't leave him in there for too long. And so it became a bullpen game. And actually, the bullpen didn't do too bad, but the problem was that the offense was bad, and they couldn't score any runs. So they lose that one, and then Matt Boyd comes in today and just gets pummeled. And then Tigers, the bullpen comes in and just throws more gasoline on the fire, and they end up getting smoked 12-2. So they started this week with a chance to play a pretty bad team and go over 500, and they end up losing 5 straight and going 6 games under 500, and just having another dip. And we talked about it last week that, okay, if they're kind of fun to watch, this week wasn't fun to watch, but, I mean, they're a team that's they're going to try hard, or whatever it is that you want to say. Basically, they give a crap, unlike the teams under Brad Ausmus, but they're still not good, and that's what happens. When you're not good, you have teams that are good, like the Indians, and sometimes teams that are bad, like the Reds, beat you. So I think the Reds, number 1, in being in the National League, you can see the difference as far as the teams that are bad in the American League Central versus the teams that are bad in the NL Central. The AL Central is still a terrible division, and people look at the Reds record and said, "Oh, well, they're not any better than the Twins. We should be able to beat them." And Detroit goes in there and gets waxed. So, just a bad week for them, but kind of dampens the spirit of the folks that were happy that they were air quotes contending, and sets them back. And water finds its level. It always does, and I think that's what's going to be happening with the Tigers here, because their schedule does not get any easier as you look at it next week.
Right, they got the Oakland Athletics coming into Comerica Park Monday at 3:10. I don't know what that time is for. Something special, I guess. There's no holiday going on Monday, June 25th, and then Tuesday and Wednesday at 7:10, Thursday at 1:10, and then they head to Toronto at Rogers Center and play the Blue Jays Friday at 7:10, and then Saturday, Sunday, and Monday at 1:07. Another 4-game series then, and then you get Tampa Bay, Houston, the All-Star break, and then
the old wraparound series with Toronto, as you mentioned, a 4-game series with Oakland coming into town. I don't know what the 3:10 game is. Is that maybe a makeup game from somewhere? Is that the reason? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to start a game at 3 o'clock.
Maybe it was just kind of weirdly scheduled that way, or somebody wanted it personally. But anyway, the point is the Tigers are now. Yeah, the Tigers are now down to 8 games back of the Cleveland Indians. Still 11 games back and 4 spots back now in the wild card spots. They're now in a somewhat tie with the Minnesota Twins for second place, except the Tigers are 3 digits ahead of those Minnesota Twins in winning percentage, 462 to 459, I believe. They're 36 and 42.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yep. So, yeah, they get it. The Tigers are going to face a red-hot team in the Oakland Athletics. They were expected to tank, but they've done a lot better. The Tigers were expected to tank, but they've done somewhat better. But the Oakland Athletics have the edge in that one, even though it's in Detroit. The Tigers may be good at home, but they're not going to. They're going to have their hands full with the Oakland Athletics, and then they're going to go back on the road, which they are 19-33 on the road. In Toronto, the Blue Jays are right behind them, but they're 35-41. The Tigers took 2 or 3 of the Blue Jays in Detroit, but they're going to be into Toronto. I see in my crystal ball, it's going to be a different story.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Oakland A's, when you look at, they're 4th in the AL West, and they're 2 games above 500. If you look at the MLB standings, 4th in the AL Central is not 2 games above 500.
AL West. Tigers are
right.
in the AL Central.
I'm sorry, yes, you're right. Yeah, the Oakland, so they're 4th place in the AL West. They're 4th place in their division. They're still over 500. Yet, 4th in the AL Central right now is not close to 500. So that should tell you a little bit about what the differences are in the divisions and how Oakland has been playing lately. They've been a little bit up and down, but as you mentioned, over the last 10 games have improved. Playing teams like Kansas City, they lost a couple to Texas before that, but then they played KC, and then they went into Houston and got swept. But then they played the Angels and actually took that series, beat the Padres, and then they were actually able to win to split the series against the White Sox. So I don't know about Red Hat, but they're certainly doing better than the friggin' Tigers, who didn't win it all last week. No,
they couldn't even win a game. They only scored 3 runs in that Cleveland series. They got outscored 26-3.
Yeah, man.
Boy. For the Oakland Athletics, they're actually chasing the AL wildcard spots. They're only 7 games back and 2 spots back of those wildcard spots. They're especially good at home at the O.CO Coliseum. But man, can they do it on the road? That's the question.
Well, we're going to find out.
Well, yep. And then for the Blue Jays, yep. Rogers Center is a really tough place to play. It's a very hostile environment.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot different. It's just you're playing a turf. It's different. It's like when they go to Tampa Bay. It's an indoor stadium with turf as opposed to outdoor with grass. Different makeup as far as the roster when it comes to speed, and the lineup's different. So it's always a challenge, especially because you're not playing them as a division opponent, so you don't see them as much. So, Detroit typically as a team, I can go back and look at this, but I know at Tampa Bay it feels like they always play terrible. And I'm pretty sure that Toronto, they probably are pretty close to the same, which they don't usually play well there.
Yep. So, that's all the teams we covered, and that is episode 321 of the Week in Review. Before we sign off, we want to remind everyone to share this episode and our entire podcast on social media and have their friends share that as well, because we want to tell them that the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast is in search of a wider audience that is fans of sports, especially our teams in the state of Michigan, the Tigers and Red Wings and Pistons, for example. So please spread the word about the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts via iTunes. Its Facebook page, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, and its Twitter handle at Michigan_Truth. I'm Taylor Phillips. Follow me on Twitter at DT2Phillips and Bug Geno at BugGeno3, 3 I's for Roman numerals. We'll talk to you next week on episode 322 of the Week in Review. Talk to you later, Buck.
See ya.
Yep. Thanks very much for listening, downloading, and sharing. We'll have the Periscope YouTube pregame tomorrow at about 2 o'clock. TTFN, ta-ta for now.
The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them.
And mission complete.